we want to close this event with a very important panel, and we wanted to provide a couple of background. And we were reflecting yesterday on the title that we came up with for this year, Human AI Synergy. And we have to always keep in mind the human aspect. And then we are always going to be the ones that are going to be controlling. We're the experts. We are the one that is controlling the use of this tool. And we wanted to have a conversation on how to create this type of synergies. And here we are today showing you an example of human synergy. The word, there's always some like technology problems. There's always some hiccups, some problems. So we had to put together a panel in record time, and we are just very fortunate to have the collaboration of this high caliber level of colleagues who just stepped up and say, yes, how can I help? And imagine, having one person to provide a presentation is difficult to coordinate. Having 6 people being here and saying, yes, I'm willing to support is amazing. And in less than one day. And then we want to make sure that we start with this because it's very important. It shows the commitment. And, we heard a lot from our students that if we have the passion, if we have the commitment, a lot of things can be done. And then here's a good example. It was unintentional, but it just turned out to be great to have a student panel before our faculty and administrators panel. I hope that this does not mix up a lot of things, but then we are sure to hear lots and deeper conversations, listening our students coming to this panel. And just quickly mention the name of our panelist, John McDonough, who is our member of the steering committee from Lehman College, who's going to be our moderator. In no particular order, we have our colleague Sumaya Villanueva from John Jay, Laurie Hurson from the Graduate Center, Evan Silberman from CUNY Central, Ed.D. Ruiz from Lehman, Edgar Troudt from Hunter College, and Ruru Rusmin from SPS. Imagine the level that we have been able to come across. So please enjoy and be ready to ask tough questions to our panelists. John.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Before we begin, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the quotes that I pulled from the first panel that I really enjoyed that we might respond to later. We don't know where the conversation ends, but it has already started. Having AI gives us the future. Professors are learning from us. I feel like a missing puzzle piece, in part because of my lack of education in AI. That might be more of a paraphrase, but that's kind of how I internalized it. So I wanted to thank all of you for providing such candor and for being so open with us before we begin to hopefully respond to some of your concerns. Before we begin, I just kind of wanted to go down the line again and have us introduce ourselves because we are coming from different institutions. We all have different roles within those institutions, and we might be answering these questions from different perspective and different lenses. So I just want to give some space for everyone to kind of talk about how they're approaching these questions and how they might approach AI in general at their institution.
Thanks, John. Hi, I'm Evan. I'm from the central office, and nobody cheers when I say the central office. So thank you. Okay, no, that's good. By title, I'm Senior University Dean for Academic Innovation, which in my portfolio includes artificial intelligence, and also the Chief Academic Technology Officer. I'm really excited to be here and to have this conversation with you. It's really great to dialogue around these topics, and it's very present and relevant.
What lens are you answering these questions from?
I actually spoke with John about this before. The lens really, for me, is a personal lens. I think that the student panel really exemplified this idea that we're all still learning. And so I speak from the academic affairs perspective as a member of CUNY's Office of Academic Affairs, but also just from all of the learnings that I've acquired since AI has really amplified itself. So very excited to share both perspectives.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Sumaya Villanueva. I'm the Assistant Provost for Academic Engagement at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Yay! Thank you. And it has been such a pleasure to be here, to learn from my colleagues and from the students. And so in my role, I oversee various offices that do direct services with students. So that includes the Academic Advisement Center, the Center for Career and Professional Development, the ACE program, SEEK. So a variety of programs that work directly with students. And I formerly was also overseeing the tutoring centers. So I think that the lens from which I am answering the questions today is more from the staff perspective and what our staff and communities that work with our students also can be doing in order to better assist our students, right? And how they themselves can avail themselves of AI to do their work even more proficiently.
Hello, I'm Ed.D. Ruiz. I'm the Vice President and Chief Information Officer here at Lehman College. Welcome all to our campus. So I always say this statement about who I am as a professional, because every time you hear IT, people just think that it's all about hardware, it's all about software. But I always say that before I am a technology professional, I am a higher educational professional. And what that means is that the mission of a college, of this college, of CUNY, is very important to me and how I look at everything that I do, everything that my team does. So I am going to be looking at answers and looking at what this amazing student panel brought to our attention is really from different perspectives, right? From the perspective of my role as a CIO, but also my role as somebody who leads providing services to student, faculty, and staff, from my own perspective of how I'm using AI and how I want my staff to use AI, how to improve and be more effective and efficient. I can tell you there's not enough hours in the day. So all this is doing for me right now, it's helping me do things faster. And so maybe I can sleep a little bit more, but not a lot more.
Hi, I'm Ruru Rusmin from CUNY School of Professional Studies, and thank you. And I'm the Assistant Dean for Faculty Development and Instructional Technology. So the lens that I'm approaching this from is that of faculty development. But not only that, I'm approaching it just as an educator, thinking about what AI means for teaching and learning. And beyond that, I would say that I'm approaching it as like a citizen of this world, as somebody who likes to use AI for certain tasks but feels guilt because of the resources it uses, the context that it's in, and someone who wants to use AI and is curious about how it could be developed, but in the context of this technocratic system that we are living in, which is trying to impose a certain way for us to approach and to use AI. And like, what are our responsibilities and what can we do as citizens and as people to sort of work within that and perhaps move that culture differently?
Hi, everyone. My name is Laurie Hurson. I'm the Assistant Director for Open Education in the Graduate Center's Teaching and Learning Center. How am I approaching AI? Thank you. So in my role as the Assistant Director for Open Education, I support graduate students who are teaching throughout CUNY on one of the many CUNY campuses, and as they teach undergraduate classes as they move towards their degree, getting their PhD. I also support uses of educational technology. So I'm working with graduate students to learn how to teach, to learn how to develop their courses for the first time, to refine syllabi and develop assignments. But I also am thinking with students and faculty about how technology is used in teaching and learning, and how can we use technology thoughtfully and critically. And part of my role in this is also supporting the CUNY Academic Commons, which is an open web framework that's used throughout CUNY by a variety of faculty and staff. So I'm thinking often about pedagogical design and course engagement. And I'm also thinking about how technology plays a role in our teaching and our learning. And then on top of that, I also teach classes myself. So I'm coming at this as an educator too. I teach psychology classes at John Jay, and I'm trying to figure out how to use AI. So hearing you all was wonderful, and I have more questions. But so as faculty, we're also learning how to use these tools. And there's one other thing. Oh, and my research is on how students use these technologies. So we recognize they're here, they're happening, and how do we actually critically consider integrating them into our teaching and learning from a variety of perspectives. So, hi.
Hi, everybody. Edgar Troudt. I'm a distinguished lecturer of computer science education at Hunter College. I'm also the director of the programs in computer science education for our School of Ed. My background, I have a PhD in computer science, and my dissertation project was applying AI to education. So I'll speak from the pedagogical perspective and the classroom instructor perspective.
Thank you all so much. Just another round of applause. So we'll start with just initial thoughts from the student panel earlier. Some themes that I noticed were professional development, transparency, guidance. You don't necessarily need to stick with those themes, but what themes stuck out to you and what would you like to address just as we open this panel? I'll start with Evan.
Hey, my walk away from is that microphones are like AI. My my walk away from that conversation is that we need to have you in our conversations around planning for artificial intelligence. That we need to capture your perspective, because we are CUNY and we are here to serve. So that was my takeaway from the conversation that I think is most impactful for me. And second, everything that you discuss, everything that is in the discourse. So your view on AI is spot on, or to embarrass myself, trending, well, or whatever term I should use. So I think it's really just amazing to hear like how synchronous this discussion actually is. I think about these kind of things from a system level, and we're having the similar conversation. So there really is this incredible, impactful to see. So thank you very much.
So confusing, this microphone situation. So the two takeaways for me were one, that conversation around how if faculty and I would add staff members were to come forward and encourage and ask openly to our students, how are you using AI, and that would elicit greater engagement and more meaningful, honest, open conversations between the faculty and our students, and between staff and students. I think that is just brilliant. And I do believe that is something that we absolutely have heard you. And I think we all will take with us and say, hey, we really do need to open up the conversation, because the way forward is to be able to understand how, when, why, where, right? That's number one. Number two, the other part that resonated with me was that a few of you mentioned specifically that while AI is absolutely critical, and we all know that it's changing very rapidly, and either we get on or we'll be left behind, there was this emphasis on, but it's not going to replace humans, right? It's not going to replace our humanity. And I do agree thoroughly with that because I do believe that at the end of the day, AI is a tool, right? First and foremost. And the reality is that as individuals, as people, we are hardwired to connect with other human beings. So that cannot be replicated, right? So that ability to connect with others, to learn from others, to have that creativity, the passion, all those things are still going to be there. And that's still what's going to motivate us to want to move forward and do more things.
So my takeaway was, first of all, how you all are model users of this tool. And so I congratulate you for that. The other takeaway for me, earlier this morning, I did a presentation on empowering students, and it was about how AI transform labor market. And the topic, some of the topics there that I covered was about competency. And I was delighted to hear these amazing words from your mouth. Critical thinking, engaging in critical thinking, problem solving, and activity. You said when you use the friend, right? When you use the tool, the AI tool, you said, I realized it wasn't going to take away my creativity. And in the research that I did, those were the skills that will continue to be relevant. The skills, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, those human skills that AI won't be able to transform. So those are my two biggest takeaways.
So, one of my takeaways from the very interesting conversation you had was that we were talking about like to be simplified, right? To say like the good things, the good ways to use AI versus the bad ways to use AI. The good ways to use AI being like brainstorming, having it to be like a thinking partner, helping it to helping you clarify your own thinking, and the bad things being like using it as a tool for producing something straight up, right? So I think this is very nuanced, and I totally agree. But my question is, how do we spread that, right? How did you guys learn it? I mean, did you come to it on your own? Did somebody tell you? Right? And I mean, I congratulate you for coming into you on your own. I think many of our students will do that, but many won't, right? They might not necessarily know. They might not just think, oh, well, these are the bad ways to use AI, and I'm either not going to use them because I don't think they're productive to my learning, or I might use them like when I'm really stuck and I have to turn in a paper. So, and then not only like helping students, learners, like figure out those good ways and bad ways to use AI, but also helping faculty who are instructing, right? Because as you said, you know, some people have the perception that it's all bad, but it's not all bad. And so how do we get to that point, I think is going to be the challenge for us in the next short term, at least.
Absolutely. Yes. The good ways and the bad ways is something that was vibing with me too. Like there's good ways to use it and bad ways, and you all were kind of articulating those for us. And I think one of my favorite things, someone was talking about an anecdote where if you're just taking the content and pasting it and then turning it in the as the assignment, which I know we know some students might do, like that is plagiarism, but it's a sign of engagement. And I thought that was one of the best points for plagiarism I've ever heard, where it's like that student Because it is like that student, even though they're not using AI in one of the ways that we're going to categorize as good for right now, they're still trying to be engaged. And then another point you all made was that the point of openness between the professor and the students. Like, let's talk about it. I'll tell you what I'm doing if you ask me. And I think that's really important because we can learn from each other the good ways and the ways that our students are using this. And the ways that we create this openness in our classrooms is just through dialogue, discussions, building a class community, your professor showing enthusiasm and passion. And those are age-old pedagogical practices. So AI is just a normal technology. It's not necessarily having to change the whole world or change the way we teach. It's just being integrated in. And if we still have this dialogue and we have this openness and we have these discussions, AI is just another thing that we're using in the classroom, and we should know what our students are doing because y'all know more than us, I think.
So I'm going to echo what you said. I'm going to say it in a more bold way. AI is not special. Let me tell you what I mean here. When a student comes to me and says that I don't understand how to write loops in C++, I don't say, go away, come back, figure it out, or say, put on my syllabus, don't use loops in this particular course. I would take a skill that the students have expressed they need, and we find ways of adding it to the curriculum. And I would say that this is the same thing as you were saying. This is not special. What I got from the student panel is the students are saying, we need this particular skill. So now how does it get integrated into the course? And we have techniques for this because we have been doing this for many years. I also want to piggyback off of what Evan said in that you've nailed all the basic concepts, the privacy, the notion of plagiarism, intellectual property. You have all of the ideas. Now it is incumbent upon us to provide a framework. That's what students pay for. They pay for the knowledge acquisition framework.
Thank you, all of you. Edgar, before you give the microphone back, I'm going to just ask you to expand upon that a little bit. And could you speak to how your institution has addressed some of those concerns, or how you have addressed some of those concerns brought forward by students?
I can, and the obstacles as well.
And the obstacles, yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna more hit the obstacle end of that, and I'm gonna continue with what I was saying before. One of my favorite quotes in the world is something by Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said, "If I have 1 hour to save the world, I'm going to spend the first 55 minutes making sure that I get the question right, and then the last 5 minutes working on the right question." I think that the questions we have, the biggest obstacle, I think, is that the questions I have heard are maybe not the right questions. The questions are, should we use AI? That should not be a question. Should we be plagiarizing? That should not be a question. We should do what we do in all of curriculum development. We should ask, what are the knowledges, skills, and abilities this course is supposed to impart? What are the full potential of AI tools? Now, how do we relate one to the other? Map the AI tools to the KSAs we have in the course, like we would do with writing or any other skill. And so until we get over that obstacle of asking the right questions, we will not solve the right problem. The second issue is just a technology issue. Calculators are mature. We know how they work. We know how to use them in education. All of the generative and non-generative AI tools are evolving every day. I saw on a mailing list that I'm on, someone asked, what do you do when students use AI-enabled glasses in the classroom? It was like yesterday on the mailing. So you understand the difficulty because this is still a technology that is in the hype cycle and is being hyped up, and we haven't found all of the mature uses for it. So that's going to be the other obstacle, that as we craft policies and as we develop pedagogy, we have to remember we can't just do this once. We have to come back to it over and over and over, because the tools will every day morph and the uses for these tools will every day evolve.
Thank you so much. Ed.D. or Sumaya, I didn't know if you wanted to expand upon anything that Edgar was mentioning.
No, that was a tough one to follow. But I will say, I think that a lot of the institutions, the place that we're at is that we know that our faculty and our staff both need additional training in order to understand the good and bad uses of AI themselves, honestly. And a lot of what we have been doing is ensuring that our centers for teaching and learning are offering workshops and making those resources available to our faculty. I will say, one area that I would urge us as a university to look deeper into is how are we also providing the same levels of training and development for our staff? Because we think a lot about what our students need, we think a lot about what our faculty needs are, and sometimes we leave our staff out of the conversation. And the reality is that our staff are just in as much need of receiving those same kinds of development, because it is incumbent upon them also to be able to do and use the technologies available to, again, expedite, or not just expedite, but really do their work in a way that is more efficient and productive, so that they have the time to be with their students that they're serving, right? And be present, and not doing sometimes tasks that your AI can, you know, schedule a meeting, do the notes for the meeting, send it to everybody. You know, there are so many things that can be done, and sometimes our staff members are not up to date with that.
Did you want to expand?
Well, I think most of the challenges and concerns have been already addressed. The other that was mentioned by students, and not one that I can speak to much, it was the discussion about curriculum and changes, and how to align those changes to after you graduate and after you leave. That was something that I heard from the students. And I think it's a takeaway for us to talk about that.
That reminded me of something. Thank you. Yes, what it reminded me of is that one of the things that we need to be doing also is learning from our colleagues in industry, right? About how are the ways in which they are using the different technologies and how it's being incorporated, so that then we can bring that information back to our campus, to our faculty, and we can then solve for where are those, who was it that was speaking about being feeling like a puzzle, that was missing a puzzle piece. If we're actively engaging with our community and professionals in the field, and they can tell us how the tools and what are the skills that the students need to have to be successful, then we can go back and retool, adjust our curriculum, work with our faculty, so that we are preparing our students for the world of work. Because we know that ultimately you come for an education, but you're coming for an education because you have the desire to go into meaningful careers.
Thank you so much. That actually brings us to the next question. Faculty development, I didn't count how many times it was said in the first panel, but I'm sure it was over 10. I was wondering, Laurie, if you could speak to some of the efforts and challenges faced when providing faculty development, and how has your institution addressed the rapid advancements in this technology?
Sure. I think that the biggest challenge is the rapid advancement and hype cycle of AI to faculty development, because the second you learn how to use a tool, it's a different tool. And the second you get a handle on this tool, you need to use another tool. So just this speed around AI development, and just the notion that it's inevitable, it's coming, you have to adopt, you have to adapt. I would encourage resistance to the inevitability discourse. It's a tool. We all freaked out with Google and Wikipedia and that thing called the internet, that it was going to make everyone a bad researcher. But recognizing AI as a tool, and it's not inevitably going to change everyday life completely. Once you can resist that discourse, you can take a minute and slow down. And I'm going to encourage people to slow down all the time. Slow down the party. Because there are positive implications of AI. We've heard many of them today, and I could name a bunch, but I won't. But there's also negative implications to AI. There's the energy and environment kind of degradation. There's labor issues. There's obfuscation of who's doing the labor that makes these tools. There's the notion of like epistemic and linguistic closure, right? Like AI does write in a certain kind of tone and a certain kind of language. And what does that mean for other languages and other tones and other voices and other vernaculars? And I think slowing down allows us to be like, what do we actually need this tool for? What is the most important use for this tool? And ethics might be balancing how much you want to use AI because it's really good at this thing and thinking about all those other things that are lying under the hood. So this speed of rapid development makes it hard to do faculty development because you're like, okay, first of all, let's figure out what's going on. And then you need a minute to slow down, but there's this pressure to keep up. There's that pressure of the inevitability. It's coming, you have to do something. So slowing down allows us to explore together. It gives us the time to build community around the tools that we want to explore. And I think that community aspect, hearing from staff too, hearing from students too, working with faculty, building a community around thinking about AI, taking the time to raise questions. You mentioned spending 55 minutes on the question. I think that's part of criticality, taking the time to ask questions of our tools, and then really kind of coming up with a shared language together and a shared approach to figure out how we want to use them.
Thank you so much. Ed.D, I didn't know if you wanted to expand on any of those thoughts.
Sure. In terms of professional development, it's always hard, we know, challenging to get large number of professionals, in this case, faculty to be trained, and also even students. But in my research, I found EDUCAUSE have published a AI framework that Barnard College is using. And I have a picture here. I kind of like it because it reminds me of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's the first layer, understanding AI, then use and apply AI. And I think in many ways, we have faculty that are in different phases of this, or in different, I guess, step of the scaffolding, if that's a metaphor. But you have to continue providing the professional development. And here at Lehman, the Center for Teaching and Learning, as you know very well, John, we offer a lot of trainings for our faculty. But also, I have to give kudos to our provost, Jorge Silva Puras, because he models the way. He loves, he investigates, he teaches a class, he talks about the agent that he developed for his class. He also has a community of practice of student, faculty, and staff that meets monthly. So that's another way where you see your leadership involved in this journey, because we are really in a journey and we don't know where we're going to end up.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind passing that to Ruru, I would just like to hear her perspective on faculty development at SBS.
Thank you. I think both of my colleagues here have said a lot of what I was thinking, so I really appreciate that. And I just want to reiterate the part about having the time and space to work, to not work, to not react to pressure and just rush through it. Okay, because there is a lot of pressure, right? You know, we know that billions and billions have been raised to sort of like develop AI and try to push AI into everything. And so that money has to be made back. So they're trying to push AI into every aspect, including education, right? So I think we should keep that in mind. And as a university and as a center for learning, right, it is sort of our mission to take that time and to think about, right, and to critically approach and to figure out like ways to use this that it's useful for us as human beings. And so, so that's very lofty, right? So how does that translate into, what we're doing on a day to day? So I think that support from leadership is very important, right? So you got to make the time and the space for faculty to do this sort of faculty development. There's a lot of pressure on faculty to be doing this and that, and a lot of, in addition to teaching, to doing all these other things. So that space has to be made for them to be able to investigate, to innovate, to tinker, etc. So space, time, and then I think also in terms of like literacy, right? Because we do need some sort of basic literacy in order to start developing further, right? So in order to develop that literacy, I think like if we could collaborate more and develop programs that would for literacy among students and among faculty, right? So I hear about things that are great things that are going on at the schools, and greater like sharing and collaboration, and perhaps through the Centers for Teaching and Learning or whatever channel it may be, through the AI academic office, that sort of collaboration I think would help us establish that baseline from which we can then experiment and grow given the time and the space.
Thank you all so much. Speaking of skills, using AI to enhance education and critical thinking was a theme that I heard that I mentioned earlier in the first panel. Sumaya, I wanted to know if you could expand on what other skills do you believe are most important for students to learn about regarding AI, and do these differ, do those skills differ from faculty or staff?
Thank you. So based on the wonderful comments from the students and many of the panels that happened even earlier, our presentations, the reality is that I think that overall, I don't think that there are so much differences between what students need to know and what faculty or staff. I think that we are all aware that the importance is to continue to hone that critical thinking, regardless of who you are. You need to be able to understand, again, it is a tool. And how do you use that tool in a way that is going to aid your work, but not take away from your common sense or your creativity, as was mentioned earlier, your ability to problem solve, right? So you need to be able to do these things because honestly, when you're in the office, right, or wherever you end up working, trust me, things are going to come at you. You're not going to be able to be like, okay, hold on, wait a minute. Let me go into, Chat GPT to figure out what is the next best step. That is actually not going to happen, right? You are going to have to know, right, intrinsically, you need to know your stuff. You need to know who to go to when there is a crisis. How do you respond? Who do you need to pull in? You need to build the relationships, right? So something that, again, it's it's so critical. You need relationships in order to make things work. Case in point, we had to pivot, for this conference, and all of us are here, and that happened on a dime, right? And why did this happen? Because of relationships, right? Somebody knows somebody, and they were like, okay, let's think critically. Who can we have? Who is coming already to this conference? Who can speak about this? And here we are, right? That wasn't done by Chat GPT or Gemini, you know. So I think that that's what I think it's critical, right? I think we all at all levels need to understand how to use the tool, how to use it effectively, but ultimately the things that make the world go round are not going to change. And building relationships is critical.
So I will add that I heard those skills from the students. You talked about understanding the technology, let's put it this way. You talked about privacy, knowing what it is that you're putting into this model, into this system. So That's one skill that you need. You also talked about being able to evaluate the responses, right? That's critical thinking. So that's evaluating uh, ethics. You also talked about ethics, not just do your homework, that don't have that thing do the homework for you. It's about learning. And I think that the most important thing is that you are, if your brain is not growing, then you are losing out. And all of you showed us that the way to do this is to have this code relationship with AI. I have to keep telling myself that it's a program behind this, not a human. I call my homie. And if I tell you a story, it's because I have a friend who's my homie, and she is rarely available for a walk. So I call my ChatGPT homie.
Yeah, so I mean, I will just add to what our other panelists said. I really think about it this way, right? That if I ask each of you in this room what unique problem you're trying to solve when you walk into whatever space you're going to walk in tomorrow morning, right? Whether it's your study space, whether it's your office, whether it's a home personal issue that you're trying to address, you're all going to have a different problem to solve, right? So let's draw that out a little bit further. To solve those unique problems, you're going to use different approaches and methodologies. You need to know what those are and how those work. And I think AI, especially generative AI, is at the point right now where that it's a leapfrogging occurrence that we've heard before every day. Each version of the popular tools does something different, and they each have a different set of models. So I think literacy is important in understanding what the tools are that you can use to solve your problem, but also what they do and how they differ within each tool. I think that leads me to the word specialization. Understand the specialization of the tool that you use and how it's effective. If I need to solve a very complicated math problem and I put it into ChatGPT, but I don't understand math, how do I know that it's actually right? I'm probably more likely to use Excel because I trust Excel and I can understand the equations it's going to use. Or I'll phone a friend. I don't have any friends. So I would lean towards specialization. I think that we also all have to really, and this was something that came out of the earlier panel that our faculty member shared, which is it differs based on discipline. We're in an academic context, right? So for art, you're going to use a different tool set. I remember last year at this event, one of the student speakers talked about her book she created using AI, and it was a beautiful book, incredible, but she used a very specific set of tools to do that. And that's going to differ from cybersecurity, where you're trying to monitor networks for threats, and AI can help make that an efficient and expedient process, right? And in business, where you're solving financial problems, and AI is going to help you analyze the market in a different way, but you're yourself going to think about it. So I think to my message to everyone, because it's universal, is really thinking about the specialization of that use case and understanding the tools in a way where you know which one best aligns to them. Because otherwise, you may not get the outcome.
Yeah, Edgar, please feel free to share.
There we go. So I like to describe knowledge as a series of 3 concentric circles: the stuff you know you don't know, and the stuff that you don't know you don't know. And that's very dangerous, that third circle, the stuff you don't know that you don't even have. I don't know how to play hockey. There are things about AI and generative AI I don't even know about. And so that's what we need to be concentrating on. basically, we need to give students a deep dive underneath the hood. How does this stuff work? How does it, and I'm not talking about the math of it and building the parse trees. I'm talking about just how does this work? It's like when you drive a car. I can't fix my own engine, but I know when certain sounds happen that it's probably the brakes, it's probably the wheels, and that's the kind of literacy that we need to be providing to you. Because there are issues in that third circle that I haven't heard talked about. For example, we've seen recently that a particular AI model, open source model released from China, has some pro-Chinese government biases in it and won't talk about certain topics. There's another particularly large company, and I won't name the individual, that has questionable answers about misinformation in society built into that AI model. And so these are the kinds of things that can hurt us if we're not actually actively talking about it. When I first started teaching, we had a course on Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, because if you just went to Word by yourself, you'd just type something and not realize you can mail merge, you can format, you can do all kinds of fancy things with this software. So it is time for us to have this as our 2025 version of the Microsoft Office class, where we go through these issues. And also the stuff that Laurie had said about the ethics of it. Some of these AI models are trained and the workers are not paid very well. And they use AI to train the models, so those models are not very good. The climate impacts. You need to be an informed consumer. And what Evan said, not only on which models and which tools are the best specialization, but your impact on society, the impact on the labor force, the biases built into it, all of that. And that deserves, if not one course, maybe multiple courses, maybe a degree.
And I want to add to that, because that's a profound perspective. We are at the point with AI where we're already seeing it, and we'll continue to see AI processes and agents and tools that are built and integrated, that are doing things automatically without intervention, that we've built and we've set up. So if the students, faculty, the administration don't understand how they're intended to work and what inherently is involved in how they operate, it could be potentially impactful in an adversarial way. And it can also be impactful in a very positive way. But we need to know what we're working with in order to affect the kind of change or outcome that we're looking for, rather than just being kind of blind consumers who decide to pick the car that ends up having all the problems we can't figure out how to fix. And by the time we realize that, there's 15 million of those cars in.
Thank you all. I think we're going to shift. There were a lot of mentions, and as the students mentioned, academic integrity is of a concern to faculty. And I just wanted to know, Ruru, I'm going to throw this over to you. How is your institution handling these concerns? And can you speak to the faculty response and or the institutional efforts that have been made so far?
This was everybody's least favorite question. So I'm gonna start with that. Yes. Yes, right. I want to start by saying that when I was talking before about faculty development and having the time and the space to do it, there was one important factor that I wanted to mention that I forgot, which was about adjuncts, right? So many of our teaching faculty are adjuncts, and providing them the time and space in order to do this, in order to become good teachers and support the students is super important, and something that we have to address from as well. So that actually does tie into the academic integrity issue, because what I hear basically from almost all faculty is, where's my detection tool? What detection tool do you have? Do we have one? Which one should I use? And, so this is a very hard question to grapple with. And so for the last year or so, we've been saying, please don't use detection tools because, there's many problems with them. They're not reliable. You can't use them as evidence because of the way they work. Um, uh, and it might it might disrupt the relationship because there's no longer a relationship of trust between you and the student. But that's not a very compelling answer to them, because they don't have time and they want something to help them right? And to give them some sort of authority when they're having the conversation with the students. What we've been trying to emphasize is to have that conversation, right? To say, I can't give you a score for this because I'm not sure that it's your authentic, work. So let's have a conversation. And so I hope that like jives with what you were saying on the student panel, that you want to have the conversation. And, from the conversation, you might find that, yes, the students say, yes, I kind of like did it because I was under time pressure or I wasn't sure how to do it. And so because of a lack of confidence, I used it. Or they might avoid the conversation. So it's not a perfect answer, this about having that conversation and not relying on detectors. But I think we might be getting a detector soon. We might. I think it's being discussed. So if that does come about, then again, it's something that we have to learn to use thoughtfully, right? And not use as, again, as evidence, and use it as perhaps a launching point for a conversation, but not in a punitive way, which is going to be hard. That's going to be hard. But I do want to ask another question in terms of this academic integrity. So we're talking about generative AI, right? So generative AI creates a product, or it generates a product, right? So that product is what we are assessing. Is it authentic? Is it a good product? Is it a bad product, right? And as long as we are assessing that product and not the process, then I think we're gonna like keep running into this issue because generative AI is so good at producing a polished product, right? So, what is learning though, right? Learning is not producing a piece of content. Learning, or let me say that again. So, higher education is not teaching you to produce a piece of content, right? Higher education is teaching you a practice, right? And that you are developing your expertise through that practice, right? And so, as long as we are assessing the product without assessing the practice, I think that's the issue that's going to give us problems. How to, I mean, it's not, this is not something new. We've talked about this for years, right? And we worked upon it for years, and we've changed the way we do things. We tried to do more authentic assessments. We do this and that. So I think it's an ongoing thing, but just made more complicated. But I think, again, if we concentrate on the practice, not necessarily the product, or both practice and the product, then that's really where we have to go. But in the meantime, I'm just going to straight up admit that it's going to be hard, right? And we're all in this struggle together.
Let me talk about healthcare for a second. Sounds completely not related. If you don't have access to healthcare, where do you end up when you're very, very sick? In the ER. And so in this country, we know this. When people have preventative health care, they are less likely to end up in the ER. I would like to liken that to this discussion on intellectual property, I'm sorry, on plagiarism, because what we're talking about now is punishment. When someone doesn't know how to use AI the right way, how do we catch them? How do we punish them? And that's missing the entire portion of preventative education. We should be spending less time on this conversation about plagiarism and academic integrity and more time on what do I model in front of my class, because our students look to us for the way we model the good uses of it. When I use generative AI in my classes, I cite it on the bottom, I say it out loud, and I tell them exactly what I did. And in fact, I give them the prompts I use to generate these particular things. There was a time that I didn't know something about a particular topic, and I started the lecture by saying, I didn't know this topic. This is how I use the Gen AI tool to learn about it, to produce an example, and then write my own lecture for this particular thing. I regularly ask students good uses of AI. So I particularly think that the best uses of AI is going from that third circle to the second circle, just the stuff you didn't know you didn't know. I encourage my students in some lessons to go ask the Gen AI, pretend that you're an undergraduate student. What are the top 5 mistakes that undergraduate students make when writing loops in C++? Because that then shows them a good way of using this particular tool. Aha, now I can know what to avoid, the downfalls I can avoid, as opposed to going to it and saying, please write me a loop program. So I would argue that The impetus is on us in the faculty to model good behavior when it comes to generative AI, to provide those opportunities for good prompts in the class, and focus less on the, if they don't know if they don't know how to use it properly, how do we punish them?
Thank you both so much. I'm just looking at my conference colleagues. Are we good on time, or I know we started a little bit late, so I just want to make sure. So as we move forward, Laurie, I just wanted to hear from you first. How do we see AI influencing higher education, just in general, or more specifically to faculty, for you in particular? And how should institutions prepare and or adapt to the advancements in using AI in the classroom?
Yeah, thank you. I think we've talked a lot about how we've seen AI influencing higher ed so far. The hype cycle, the inevitability discourse, students are using it, faculty are using it. We need to talk about it and be open about it. So I think I'll answer the second part is, what does the institution do about it? And Edgar brought up healthcare, which seemed like a non sequitur, but is actually really helpful for me too. Because I'm going to reference an article by Dana Boyd where she suggests that we use an interventionist model for dealing with and thinking about AI. And the opposite of an interventionist model is a solutionist model, or a determinist model. If we see AI as a solution, as a way to fix the university or make it more efficient, or increase student success, it can do those things. I'm not denying that it can do those things. But if we think of AI as a solution, as something to be applied, blanket over an entire place, CUNY is so diverse in so many ways, and also so specific. Every campus has its own vibe. I love coming to Lehman. It's beautiful here. But so an interventionist approach is like, what's working in this community? What are the students on this and the faculty on this campus doing? And back to the slow it down and talk to communities, like, what is happening at BMCC? What tools are students building at BMCC that might be used in the university in other classes? What are kind of homegrown tools that folks are developing at the Graduate Center that might aid in historical research? What are students doing or faculty doing here at Lehman? And thinking about how we intervene in the AI use across the university, knowing that a one size fits all, a one detection tool for all is not going to work. It's not going to work as well as it can, unless, and an interventional approach where we actually talk to the people using AI and people building AI tools is going to produce a much better outcome of AI in the university if it comes from the people who are already within it and know what's going on. So I'll leave it there, but that was my healthcare connection because medicine is interventionist too.
That feels like it fits so well at CUNY because we have such a diverse ecosystem, and each campus is so unique. And I think I think there's a lot of good elements of this conversation that speak to how AI is going to affect higher education. I definitely think we're going to see more industry partnerships where institutions are relying on companies like Google and Microsoft and IBM and Amazon, who have the infrastructure and the technology to scale and resource AI initiatives in a way that would take be a longer and harder road for institutions. I think that more institutions are going to establish frameworks and guide rails around the use of AI to provide clarity, because it's necessary to have some agreement on what constitutes ethical use of AI. I think we're going to see a deeper integration of AI into our technologies and tools, to the extent that in some cases we may not know it's even there. Right? But rather than sit here and tell you, pretend to predict the future, let me just share a few examples that I've picked up from different research groups on how AI is being used, and some are pretty obvious and some are really insightful. So there's the common conversational AI concierge. This is Decan University that developed the Genie personal AI assistant to perform a variety of tasks to support students from reminding students when assignments are due to connecting students with appropriate campus contact if they need help with a class project. That was a partnership with IBM Watson. So again, industry partnerships. Smart scheduling tools. North Carolina State University's Enrollment Wizard combines student term schedules and personal calendars into one offering. So students can use Enrollment Wizard to perform both degree audits and registrations at the same time, which is sortable by time and seat availability. And student sentiment tracking, which I think is quite interesting, that the University of St. Thomas's Emotion API platform monitors students' emotional trajectory during lectures via facial tracking software. Instructors gain insight into student engagement and can tailor lectures to capture student interest. So really, really interesting automated grading at Johns Hopkins, and a variety of other examples that are already in use and have been developed in different institutions. So I think the impact on higher education is going to be really profound, and we're going to see a lot of different use cases. But the one that really resonates with me is the idea that in administration, we create more efficiency so that work can get done in a way that frees up administrators to focus on more tasks that require more critical thinking, analysis, and deep work. And the faculty side, I think AI is going to help create space and time for faculty to spend more time engaging with students and being the role models that we've heard are necessary today, which is already happening, but will continue to happen differently. And I think, you know, for students, it will provide more open more open information. As a student, I can understand very clearly how my credits will transfer, right, within my institution. I can understand the impact on my time to degree. I can understand how many credits I take and in what disciplines. I can understand the outcome of those decisions in terms of career, employability, in terms of income, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the access to data, making it more open and transparent while creating more efficient processes for students in terms of how that data is used to make decisions about academic journeys. Lots of good examples out there. I think that the future is really bright, and I'm personally very excited about it.
I just wanted to respond quickly to that. Because yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities and there's a lot of tools out there that are being developed. And I would exercise slowness, slow it down. I would be critical of industry partnerships and really be explore those industry partnerships, but at the same time be critical of them, because industries have ROIs, like the industry tools have like needs for returns on investment. They're doing different sorts of data collection. And of course, we're not going to be able to provision all the tools that we need at CUNY. But I think it is important to think about the tools that students are using and provide access to those tools without making it like you have to plug in to use this particular tool for this particular thing, because students and faculty and staff all have different workflows and different needs. So there's going to be a variety of different tools that people want to use. And we need to remember that these tools are produced by certain people in Silicon Valley or otherwise that have specific goals. And you know, the tools might be useful for us, but those tools are also being used for other things, and data capture and data flows and capital flows. So when we think about the tools that and the industries that we're partnering with, I think we should really think critically about those things.
And I agree with you. And I think that's where we need to have a clear understanding of the ethical use of AI. And as you said earlier, around data, right? We need to understand how the data is used, how privacy is managed, et cetera, and so forth and so on. And so there is a lot of question asking that is critical in making these decisions and figuring out how these fold into higher education, doing it in a way that protects all of us. Same vein.
So So from the classroom perspective, I think that AI is going to increase the amount of personalized learning that happens, learning that is tailored to you as an individual. One of my colleagues at York College, who I think is absolutely brilliant, has built custom trained chatbots for each assignment. So the way her class works is you're asked to write an essay. Before you write the essay, you should talk to this particular bot. The bot has some rules. Don't write the essay for me. But the bot also knows what the assignment is and pushes back with questions. And so just that experience of talking with the bot, you get some really good hands-on insight. Also, in terms of assessment, now we have these AI tools talking to a bunch of people. We start to understand what are the commonalities of the questions that our students are asking, because it's incumbent upon us as instructors to say, oh, I didn't realize all of my students have this particular problem. Let's now rectify that problem. Let's talk about that thing in class. So I think there's going to be a lot of customization there. I'll also give a plug to a tool called Notebook LM, which is a Google tool where you can train your own LL, or I should say small LLM, which is, I don't like that name. But you can upload documents to Notebook LM, like your notes for the semester, and then you can start to ask questions of it. So I did this. I uploaded my data structures notes, and then you can ask questions about things that happen in my data structures course. It also generates a podcast where you get basically a study audio. So again, with these tools, if we set up the frameworks for it, we start to see opportunities for customized and personalized learning. It's like everybody gets their own tutor without necessarily having to pay for that private salary.
Thank you, everyone. I was told we had 5 minutes, 7 minutes ago. Um, so not to cut this off abruptly, but I just want to give an opportunity to thank everyone and invite someone if they want to say anything as we wrap up. I'm getting no. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, hello, hello. Just one, before we start heading out, I know the energy is here, is present. Let help us in giving another round of applause for our panel. So this is not finished yet. We have a good opportunity to continue these conversations. I know you have lots of questions and we didn't have an opportunity to ask those questions, but they're going to be here to have those conversations. We have a little surprise for you at the cafeteria, a nice reception. We're gonna do a nice raffle. So we invite everybody to join us upstairs to the cafeteria. And Albert is going to share with you what's coming next.
I think you already did that, but. Oh, right. We do want to give thanks to all of the people that, excuse me, hello, wonderful panel over there. Great job. We do want to give thanks to the people that puts this together every year and make it happen. It's not just the committee. It's an army of people. You saw some of them with the light blue shirts on. All of those guys, all of the tech, media, support from Lehman. It takes a lot. We start a year out planning for this thing. So let's give them a round of applause. And it's one thing I want to say personally, and I'm sure that the committee feel the same way. We do this because we love to put this together and to be able to share things with not just the CUNY community, but everybody that comes and attends. So we do this with no compensation or anything. We work long hours to get it together. And this year it was a little bit different. We had to pivot, and I want to give a huge thank to this panel that they came together in one day. And they were up all night, I'm sure, like we were. So we want to give you guys a big thanks for coming together at the last minute and pulling this together. It was great. It was fantastic. And the moderator, of course. Yep. And of course, we want to give thanks to our student panelists. They were great as well. All of the presenters, all of the presentations you guys attended. I'm like, we always get overwhelmed around this part because it's the end of it, and we kind of wish it was still going on, but we do need a break. We need rest. But anyway, we want to thank you guys. And next year, I hope I have it here. And of course, we can't forget our sponsors. We want to thank them again. They did a great job. And next year, it's actually going to be at BCC. So it's coming back around again. So, yep. So we hope that you can attend next year. I know we're looking way too far ahead, but let's hope we're all, healthy and strong, and we'll be here next year at BCC. And what Carlos said, up in the cafeteria, we have some food, things you can relax and unwind, have conversations, and we have a great raffle with some really good things that we always raffle off. Somebody had a question? I did not say wine, but there's a great pub around the corner. No, I'm just kidding. No wine, but you'll get a chance to relax and network with people. So let's go up to the cafeteria and we'll see all of you guys there. Thank you. Huh?
That was good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll say it. Okay, we'll do it.
Thank you very much. You did a great job. Thank you. No problem. Yep. It's pretty nice, pretty good.
Especially having like everything in